All righty, let's go to a little of the current retro WWE. The A&E shows are more entertaining than anything on Fox and USA. And you want to do Rivals first? It was shorter. Let's get that out of the way, even though it came second. Short is good. No, actually, it had more Foley in it and less of DX than biography. You know, I saw this program, and the thought I came away from it is that Mick Foley's curse is making marks that want to be deathmatch wrestlers and use thumbtacks prevalent, because their understanding of his talent was so superficial that that's all they took away from him. They didn't understand the verbal ability, the intelligence that he's got, the likability of his personality, no matter what he does, the psychology that he used, the effort that he put into thinking of what he was going to do and say. And all these wannabe fucking knuckleheads took away from it was, here's a guy who looks like shit like me, so if I hit people over the head or get hit over the head or whatever with large, blunt, sharp objects, I can be a star too. And they completely were not able to grasp, were not on a high enough plane to understand that the only guy that was going to do all that and still be that level of star is the guy that people genuinely like and genuinely has talent. But that's Mick's curse. Because all that it would be like if all you got from Sinatra was, yeah, he was tied up with the mob. Just the most unsavory part of any great artist's life or personality or existence or whatever. That's all you take away from it. But that was unfortunately, the sad takeaway from seeing this show. And at the same time, it shows how Triple H, and they even admitted it, the snob, the goofy gimmick that they kind of made him when they got him from WCW, and he was a blue blood with, Regal. They took the blue blood thing and made him a rich snob from Greenwich, Connecticut, because it was a rib on Vince.
Well, no, in WCW, he was French.
Was he? Oh, yeah, Jean-Paul Levesque.
Yeah.
But same deal. The fucking tailcoat and the curtsy and the whole 9 yards. And Sean beat around the bush, Michael's saying that it was his foot in the door gimmick. But that's what it was, and that's the point I was trying to make. Even the people doing it and their friends did not like that gimmick. So when I made mention on one of the shows here a couple months ago when old Shitstain was saying, well, yeah, he didn't think Triple H would ever draw a dime. I said, no, the fucking guy doing the curtsy is not going to draw a dime. And apparently everybody involved in it agreed with me. But
yeah, can I just say something real quick? Because someone pointed this out and I thought it was interesting. Just your brief thing the other day about the 1997 booking ideas of Russo. He had ideas for JBL, how to repackage him and how to use him, make him more like the real JBL. Wasn't his story last year that he hated JBL, that's why he created the Brawl for All?
Well, I don't know whether he said he hated him as a person, but he said Bradshaw was always bragging in the locker room about how tough he was. What he was always doing was fucking riding and ribbing somebody because he's a loud Texan. And Shitstain had never been in a locker room of any type before and didn't understand the interplay and assumed that Bradshaw really was telling this guy he was going to knock him out or that guy or the other goddamn thing. And well, that's at least the story that he came up with after the fact to what was that, explanation number 6 or 7 or 8 for why he wanted guys to fucking shoot on live television with gloves on. But yeah, no, it depends on what the fucking time period is and what he can say that he looks the best on. Whereas my shit's pretty consistent.
Yeah.
It just, in some eras, people don't like it, and in some eras, they do. But this program, they acted like that Mick and Triple H got each other over. And obviously, in Triple H, you saw he was working his ass off in this. And that's one thing that has come out, and the point's been made, especially after we get through the biography. Triple H was the only one of these fucking guys that really didn't have any bad habits and was professional enough to do what he needed to do in any situation, even if he was getting punished for the curtain call. But Mick was already more established at the time that they started this program than Triple H was. And of course, that sit down with Jim Ross, we've talked about this on Mick's biography, but it's been a while. But the sit down with Jim Ross is not just what sold the fans on Mankind, Mick Foley, but it's what sold Vince. He was sitting watching. And when he saw that, that's when he finally got Cactus Jack and decided to go with him. I always call him Cactus because I knew him as that first. But anyway, they made the point in this program, I thought very well, that the fans got to love Cactus because they loved the person. And nobody's ever really successfully copied or imitated or even done anything in the same vein as his promos and his psychology and his likability and realness. Like I said, a lot of people just copy the stunts, but then you look back, Cactus sold everything. And remember, he was a full-grown man, 275 pounds doing this shit. And now these little, fucking ballerinas will do the same shit and pop right back up, and they weigh 160. So there was more of an element of damage and realness, and in some cases, as Mick will tell you, because there was. But anyway, they got into a King of the Ring 97, Triple H and Mankind, and Triple H finally gets the win, the King of the Ring, that he was supposed to get in 96 when he got punished for the curtain call, and now they get China. And the thing that came up to me, I don't know, I didn't really see at the time that he was planning this, but I see now he was. Triple H has always been, you could say, ambitious, or you could say a locker room social climber, but he's always been smart about what do I need, what can set me apart. I need to get out of this goofy snob gimmick from Greenwich. I need the girl bodyguard with me because that's great dressing for the way I look. I need, this and that. He would change things, and he had the political pull, or was getting it, to start getting those things done. And that I loved the Dude Love segment, again, because it was, I've told you this story, have I not? When Cactus came to me and said, Corny, what do I do about Dude Love?
Yeah, I thought of it actually as soon as they played the clip of him saying, have mercy.
Woo, have mercy, baby. For the newer listeners, and I'm not, this, Mick Foley made up Dude Love as a teenager. That was his wrestling gimmick, to play wrestling with his friends. And the video of him doing the splash off the roof of the house onto the mattress, that was Dude Love. But the problem was that when they actually wanted Cactus to become Dude Love, there really wasn't a Dude Love. He had done a couple of interviews on the camera with his friends doing that thing, and maybe he'd had a backyard match or two as Dude Love, but he didn't. Who is Dude Love? What are his promos? What does he do? And the whole idea that Mick had of Dude Love as a teenager was that was a kind of a stereotypical cocky, pretty boy wrestler, like Shawn Michaels. He kind of wanted to be Shawn, the sexy boy, the boy toy. But with Dude Love just dripped, hippie 70s type of thing. And he already had some tie-dye. And I said, Cactus, just do the Valiant Brothers. Do Handsome Jimmy Valiant. Whoa, missy. And all that old Superstar Billy Graham kind of shit. That's the era you're looking at with the tie-dye, the Dude Love, the wrestling gimmicks. And just I gave him some lines that the Valiant Brothers did, or that Graham had done, or You know, who brother dude loves like cheap toilet paper. He don't take crap off nobody. It's corny. That's the whole idea. And then he got the girl dancers because he's a sex symbol. And one of them was Colette on one of the, his wife on one of the Raw programs. And Vince got into this to the point where he was back there personally. He envisioned the intro of Dude Love and he produced it personally back in the hallway. Remember, it was just Mick's feet, his boots. And he's just walking, but he's walking with that little bounce. And there's, as Vince would say, the click track. And he's coming out to the, and you don't know what Dude Love looks like, but that's the bumper to the break. Vince loved that shit. So that was, and then, you know, I've mentioned before that Cactus came to me after a while. He said he hated Dude Love because Dude Love wasn't taking bumps and Dude Love wasn't getting thrown off top of the cage. Dude Love was dancing with, you know, the girls in the bikinis and with the fans and doing the groovy shit. And he said, am I shorting people? They, you know, they want to see me do this and that and the other thing. I said, no, they're loving this because this is you too. And you're not killing yourself. Because they had been, the fans had actually been getting queasy about the bumps he was taking and what he was doing himself because they liked him. And that's almost impossible to obtain in wrestling where they actually genuinely like you anymore. So I said, no, you're not shortchanging them. You're making them happy in a different way and you're saving some of your career. But anyway, so this program kind of goes concurrently with Cactus morphing into the Three Faces of Foley. And then finally, Cactus Jack does the debut against Triple H in Madison Square Garden that we referred to a little while ago. And Kevin Dunn said, nobody's going to know him in New York at Madison Square Garden. And the place fucking pops. And he tore the house down. And then by the time he won the title in January of 99, he was as over as anybody in the company but Rock or Austin, but in a different way. Rock was a movie star, even though he wasn't really in the movies yet. And Austin was the biggest star in the business because he was the kick-ass fucking rattlesnake. They didn't like either one of those guys as much as they liked Mick Foley, the fans. They were heroes. They looked up to him. They respected him. But Mick had the fucking personal love of the people. And that, I think, is what Triple H saw as, boy, I can really get some heat fucking this guy around. And he stepped up the game by becoming the game and the blah, blah, blah. And that, again, that metamorphosis picked him up a little bit more in seriousness to where now the people have forgotten about the curtsy and the snob and the, you know, what was it? Harpsichord music they gave him as Hunter Hearst Helmsley at first?
I believe so. First time I saw Sable, she was walking Hunter Hearst Helmsley to the ring.
Yes, because God damn it, remember that they thought the way to get her over and get Mero over was to have her be the abused. Again, they always wanted the heels to abuse the women. They wanted her to be the girl that was escorting Hunter Hearst Helmsley to the ring, and then Mero, after a couple weeks, would save her from his, you know, rude treatment. And somehow that would get both these amateurs over, and it didn't. Both amateurs, I'm talking about Mero and Sable now. Anyway, so Triple H wins the title from Mankind, and then Cactus Jack comes back to get even in a street fight. And I'm glad they put it in. Vince McMahon said no thumbtacks, and they did them anyway. Because I've always said, if I can't imagine the face on Vince McMahon, if anybody in my presence had ever at that point in time come up to him and said, so we're going to take a bag of about 5,000 thumbtacks and dump it out in the ring and take bumps in it. So that's one good thing that Vince said, but they did it anyway. And they inspired a lot of indie superstars with that match because it was a stunt show. And, every great man has had a negative effect on something. And unfortunately, Mick's effect upon the simple-minded was his. And then they do the career on the line match because Mick, imagine this, in his early 30s, is thinking, well, I should probably retire because my body is fucking broken. And they do a Hell in a Cell and Triple H wins. So what a program. Did Cactus ever beat the fucking guy?
No, that was the frustrating thing as a wrestling fan at the time. Again, we talked about it with, I guess, DX, but we didn't talk about it. We talked about it with something else. They were jamming Triple H down our throat for several years, well past where anyone else who was a wrestling fan wanted to see him on the show, but they were not going to stop. And although the Triple H who feuded with Mick Foley in 99 was different than the one in 97, who was still getting shoved down everyone's throat, it was the same thing. And we can all look back now, and Triple H was a good wrestler. Bruce Pritchard had the most honest comment. He said, whatever you say about this guy, he went out there and worked as hard as he could. Every time he got hurt, he finished a match. Every time. I mean, you can't say anything bad about the work ethic. It's just about, this was right before the period of Raw where Triple H would begin every show with a 20-minute monologue, just tearing down the rest of the roster. It was the beginning of bad things to come, I thought. And you brought up that last match, I guess it was a Hell in a Cell match. I had not watched that in many, many years. I actually thought watching it was a little sad. It was almost like trying to recreate Mick Foley's greatest hits just a few years later in that match. Yeah. And when he took the fall through the cage into what was clearly a crash pad, it wasn't like he fell in and sometimes it looks like broken planks or something. It looked as safe as possible. It would have been something that got a bigger pop if they hadn't seen the real thing from him a few years earlier.
Well, and also, I hadn't thought of this. I saw that all those years ago. It's been 23 years, and I hadn't seen it since then, and I'd forgotten. I don't know, but that he dodged a bullet on the second bump through the top of the Hell in a Cell to the gimmicked ring may have been more dangerous than the one that he took 2 years earlier, whatever, that was unplanned, that the ring wasn't gimmicked. Because did you see him hit the back of his head when Triple H backdropped him so he could land, too many pronouns, pal, backdropped Cactus so that he could land on the gimmicked section of cage? The back of Cactus's head going over on the backdrop hit one of those support beams on the cage, and it almost over-rotated him where he was going feet first through that goddamn thing instead of ready to take a flat back bump. He could have, with that distance to drop, if he had rotated any farther over, that could have been, he could have missed the spot. It could have been fucked up, or he could have been knocked out by getting hit in the back of the head with a fucking steel beam 20 feet in the air before he landed. So that one, because he tried to get backdropped over it, but the back of his head hit that thing and he bounced off of it.
And even in that match, he took a bump off the side of the cage onto one of the tables. And again, you just saw a couple of years earlier the match with him and the Undertaker. So
yeah, the hip toss off the top from twice as high.
Yeah.
That's what I told him after that match, after the cell match with the Undertaker. I said, Mick, you can't ever top this, and please don't fucking try. Because that was the limit of human endurance right there.
Weird question for you, but it's obviously something we see in modern times, and you could say maybe you saw it with Mick Foley. I mean, maybe not even maybe. You saw it with Mick Foley. The idea of wrestlers trying to constantly top themselves, is that a new sensation, a new thing in wrestling? The idea you constantly have to go out there and do something so much more than what you did before?
Yes. Well, and for two reasons, one valid and one stupid. The stupid reason that everybody knows is because guys in the days when you worked or didn't work, depending on whether you made money or not, you didn't want to get hurt. You didn't want to hurt anybody else. You wanted to protect the credibility of the business and not do obviously phony shit just because you came up with an idea that would be a cool spot. And the idea that someone, whether it be your opponent or your booker or your promoter, if you started doing too much top this shit stuff, would calm you down and say, no, the guy working with you doesn't want to go along with it, or it's not your place on the card, or you're going to be out of here in 3 months, but we still got a business to run, or something like that. That was so the stupid thing is guys trying to top themselves now because you get to the limit of human endurance and or of things you can do without showing obvious cooperation. And once you pass that, you're just risking yourself unnecessarily for nothing. But the valid reason was because they didn't need to. In the territory days, you had some place to go. So the fans weren't going to see, unless you were the top guy in the territory and bulletproof, Jerry Lawler in Memphis, Dusty in Florida for quite some time, or Eddie Graham before him, or Bruno in the Northeast, or Gagne in the Midwest. We could go on and on. You were cycling in and out from territories, so you weren't having to top yourself from a match you had 4 years ago, and they're still seeing you, so you got to take a bigger fucking bump. And it was more about who won the match? Did the hero get even with the villain? Is the championship safe for democracy in the hands of our hero? Simple stuff that everybody could relate to, not who can take the biggest bump. And the most dangerous thing, I'll say this and then I'll quit. The most dangerous thing done in those days was not in the match that you had, but the angle to lead up to the match. The angle is where you did something that was conceivably dangerous or deadly or whatever, because that was the shocking incident that caused the first match in this rivalry to come about. And that was what you wanted to register with the fans the most. So, you know, the Mongolian Stomper didn't fucking steal the sledgehammer and knock the concrete block off Joe LeDuc's head and hit him in the head with the sledgehammer in a match. He did it in the angle on television to make people want to see the match. And they had the match as soon as LeDuc got out of the hospital, where he went for real because Stomper really hit him over the head with the sledgehammer. But that's what I'm saying, is that you did something dangerous or shocking or potentially injurious to get the people interested in seeing the guys fight. And once that they were already interested in seeing them fight, then you could do, as long as you were a top main event guy, you could do your fucking match with the other guy and the people were into it. You didn't just book a cold match and then have them do 18 million fucking bumps through furniture and expect that to increase the house, because then the only ones that you're promoting to with all of that are the ones that already bought a ticket to see a cold match. Put it on TV where everybody can see it, and you got the widest chance of drawing the most people. So that was two things. Nobody topped everybody in the old days because they didn't have to for those reasons, and they were too smart to try to do that, because then it would just make their job. If guys were doing that in territories, it would make their job harder because they'd have to do more and more. And it would make the booker's job harder because these two yahoos have just goddamn killed 3 stipulations by doing all this wild shit and getting up and continuing on. So we can't fucking pile drive the guy once and carry him out in an ambulance because this guy just got pile drive twice and got back up. Or we can't do the other thing because this guy just killed it. So there was restraint in the midst of all the chaos and violence.
All right, and that was WWE Rivals.
It was? Oh, yeah, it was. That's where we were. All right.